Hello everyone, my name is Clantus and welcome to the clan. So without further ado, let's get into this video. But before we get there, you guys already know the drill. Please smash the like button for me because it's good for the algorithm to grow the clan even bigger than it is. And I do see the algorithm is really pushing my videos far and wide. Thanks to you guys that are doing this and participating. I highly appreciate it. Those that are just watching the video, guys, it only takes a millisecond to click the like button and then continue watching. But other than that, guys, let's get into this video and get to the North Gauteng High Court at the Senzo Meyiwa murder retrial. Oh my goodness, the beginning of the morning, it was on fire. Remember, everybody was waiting with bated eyes for the qualifications of Mr. Mthethwa. And just before Mr. Mthethwa took the stand, in fact, he already took the stand and he was reminded that he's under oath. And then the state stood up on objection regarding the qualifications of Mr. Mthethwa. It said that actually, this is actually wrong, that the defense would ask for such irrelevant information from a witness who did not go to school for forensics, and he tried to explain himself and say all of this. Yes, the witness did admit that they did not secure the crime scene, and in my mind I'm thinking, but you are the state, you're not supposed to be saying things like that. But anyways, Baloy said that they did admit that they did not secure the crime scene, and he said it's okay to criticize. And then he asked, or he applied to the court, that it basically strikes off this request from the defense, and the judge said no, the court is not going to strike this from the defense's request, because the defense stood on this precisely for the fairness of their client's trial. But then in my mind, I was like, yesterday you had the opportunity to stand up on objection when Mshololo wanted to know what did he train at the police academy, if we can mention his training at the police academy. And it was the witness himself who said he does not have the list of courses or training that he has done with the SAPS, and if he can be allowed to compile a list of all his trainings before he brought it to the court. And he asked that if he could bring them today, yesterday meaning today. And then the court said okay, and the judge at the end, the judge said, hey, don't forget to bring your qualifications tomorrow. And Mshololo stood up and said, even your matric. So I do have a very strong thoughts, but you'll hear my thoughts about this at the end of the video. So please stay tuned so you can hear what my thinking was regarding this entire saga that took place at the beginning of the day. But other than that, of course, the state called Mr. Mthethwa's colleague or partner at the time, Senzo Meyiwa's death, which was on the 26th of October 2014. And this is Matebula. Yes, Matebula says that on the day he was with Mthethwa, and then they got a call dispatcher which was telling them that there was a shooting in progress, and they gave them the address. He says that he does know the area and is familiar with the area and the street, but they were not familiar with the house. And so they got there eventually, and when they got there, they saw a few bunch of people just standing by the pavement. Nobody was in the yard, but when they got out of the van, they went and they met Themba Khumalo. But before we even get there, he was asked about when they were going to the Khumalo house, did they come across a lady that was flagging them and pointing towards the park? He said yes. There was somebody that waved at them and pointed towards the park. But okay, we already know what happened at the park. And I don't want to also speak too much on this witness because he's basically mimicking what Mthethwa has already testified in court. Even though their testimony seemed to be like there is one crime scene but two versions of what took place at the crime scene. But I'm just going to go through those little differences that he mentioned. The first thing that he said was when they got to the Khumalo house, they met with Themba Khumalo. They asked Themba Khumalo what happened, and Themba Khumalo said Senzo Meyiwa got shot. That is all that he knows. Everybody else that was here, they are at the hospital. And then remember, Mthethwa said they did not know who was the victim. But Matebula says Themba told them who the victim was. That is why I said, these guys, there is no way that you're going to abandon your crime scene and go to the hospital when you could secure the crime scene and do not leave the crime scene until the owners of the house come back. And this is when you will find the information that you are looking for. But no, because they were curious to see Senzo Meyiwa, and that is why they drove to the hospital. And then when they got to the hospital, they're like, okay, now that we have been curious and we quenched our curiosity, now let's grab somebody and go back home with them, so that in our statement we will say we went to the hospital to get somebody who's going to give us the full detail. When in fact, and they admitted to this, that they abandoned the crime scene and left it with a civilian, meaning that with Themba Khumalo, and this is Makhumalo's brother, or the uncle of Kelly Khumalo and Zandile Khumalo. So, of course, according to Mthethwa's testimony yesterday, evidence in chief, he said that the first time when they got to the Khumalo house, they went into the house because it was opened for them by Themba Khumalo, and then they just scoured around, and then they left, and then they went to the hospital. And when they came back with Khumalo, and then this is when they got to hear the full details of what had happened. Mthethwa says when they got to the Khumalo house the first time, they did scour around, they did search for like bullet shells and cartridges and any other exhibitions that they will note. However, they quickly rushed to the hospital. Again, he's admitting, and even admitted, this is a fact, he admitted that they abandoned the crime scene, because when he was asked about that, he said he had no comment. And then they went to the hospital. When they got to the hospital, this is when Kelly Khumalo was driving Senzo Meyiwa's BMW X6 or SUV, as they said. They kind of like met at the gate, and then Kelly Khumalo wound down the window, and then the police also wound down the window. Kelly Khumalo introduced herself. Remember what Mthethwa said? He said that Kelly Khumalo introduced herself as the mother of Senzo Meyiwa's child. But this particular witness said that Kelly Khumalo introduced herself as Kelly Khumalo. And then from there, they proceeded to go inside. When they went inside, this is when they met the people that were in the house, in the lobby, and then they went to see Senzo Meyiwa and got a declaratory form about the death of Senzo Meyiwa. And this is when they grabbed Khumalo and they drove with her back home. When they were asked, when this witness was asked about Ntabseng, if Ntabseng was one of the people that went with them, or Mapiri for that matter, the police said no, it was just them and Khumalo. They had left the student constables at the hospital, so it was just the three of them, meaning it was Mthethwa, it was Mathebula, and Khumalo. Ntabseng nowhere to be seen. Again, I still feel like these guys, they are disputing Ntabseng's testimony about the hospital scene and from the hospital to the house, because they knew already that the crime scene was tampered with, and everything that Ntabseng said on the stand, they are just going to deny knowing her altogether. I think Ntabseng was with them, because there's no way that Khumalo would be distraught as she was. She would be able to carry herself with two strangers, policemen, men of authority, without any company. I don't think that is even possible. Maybe it's possible, but I don't think she did not have company, so that she would feel comfortable knowing that somebody familiar is with her, with these two strangers. So just as when Mshololo was done questioning this witness about the few little things that they wanted tied up, this is when Advocate Mnisi stood up. When Advocate Mnisi stood up, and he said there are new development regarding accused number 3. And I'm thinking, what is that? And he drops a bombshell. And he says, he tells or informs the court that the incident that happened on the 9th of February 2015, remember the gun? Remember the Alexandra investigation, the Alexandra taxi violent case, where, where Masondo and, where Masondo and Dlamini were investigating a killing of a taxi boss or a taxi driver in Alexandra, and then they were searching for the suspect, and they went to the suspect. They said the suspect was in Alexandra. When they got there, he was already gone, but somebody whispered to them and said, actually, we know his address. This is where he lived. And then they drove there. And then as they drove there, they did see the suspect, and he was with his girlfriend. Just before he opened the gate, that's when they pounced, and then they put him under arrest and told him why he's being under arrest for the killing or for whatever the reason was regarding the death of a taxi owner in Alexandra. They asked him to go into his room, and when they went into his room, they asked him if they can search, which is, I still think all this is a lie that they asked him. And then they search his room, and then Dlamini found a pistol on top of the wardrobe together with a bluish box with ammunition inside. Now, apparently that gun, indeed, he was charged with possession of illegal firearm. He was prosecuted and convicted for it. This is what Mnisi had brought to the court. And in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, isn't that double jeopardy? He's already convicted for a crime that you are bringing into this court, meaning that that gun, it's done and dusted. You can't be bringing it into this trial. So, and into this trial, how is it connected with the death of Senzo Meyiwa? That was another thing. And then there was a debate between the judge and Mnisi, and then I understood what the judge was asking Mnisi, but Mnisi was being evasive with the answers, which kind of also irritated me a little bit, but I also understood why he was being evasive, because he also doesn't want to give all the information about his client, whether he's still serving a prison term for possession of unlicensed firearm, or he is a free man, or he was acquitted from that charge altogether. But nonetheless, all of it, because he was convicted, therefore you cannot bring it into a prosecutorial part of any trial regarding that gun, because now you want to try him again for something that is already been tried for and convicted or acquitted for. That is why Mnisi cited section 106 subsection 2 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977. And I did look into it. I was like, what does it say? And this is what it says. Please indulge me. So section 106 is pleas, but he focused on subsection 2, which reads, 2 or more pleas may be pleaded together, except that a plea of guilty may not be pleaded with any other plea to the same charge. In a nutshell, double jeopardy, because he's already convicted for possession of illegal firearm. Why are you bringing it in an active trial? Because he's already convicted for it. In my mind, I'm thinking, whoa, Mr. Baloy, what were you trying to do here? Deceive the court about a gun that is already done and dusted with? But Baloy did stand up and say, but which I'm going to say what he said. Now, then I looked at double jeopardy. What is double jeopardy according to our criminal justice system? And it said, once again, I went into the rabbit hole, and the rabbit hole told me that section 35(3)(m) of the South African Constitution, that every person has the right to a fair trial, which includes the right not to be tried for a crime that person was previously found guilty or acquitted. This is referred to as double jeopardy. That is why the court, which is the judge, he said, this is unconstitutional that the state would bring a case or a matter that has already been ruled over, meaning that the person has been found guilty for, and then he's convicted. Double jeopardy. This is when the state stood up and said, actually, the reason why we were bringing this, which is still going to argue, is about a bullet head from that gun. And in my mind, I'm thinking, but that is still double jeopardy, though. It doesn't matter where that bullet head came from. If it came from that gun, then it is still double jeopardy. In my mind, that's what I thought, unless it's going to argue a different angle regarding this gun and this bullet head that was found, I don't know where, that links the accused number 3 with the death of Senzo Meyiwa. So we're going to hear the ballistics. I cannot wait to hear the ballistics regarding this part. One of the things that Matebula said, that when they responded the first time, when they looked around the Khumalo household, all they could see was that there was possibly a party that was going on, because there were cans of beer, the plates were all upside down, or something about the plates that he said. And in my mind, I'm thinking, but there were 2 cans. How would that indicate there was a party here? 2 cans of alcohol does, I don't know, I don't drink. Maybe 2 cans of beer does indicate there was a party. I have no idea, but that is what he saw. And then we cannot dispute what he saw because he saw it his way. And that's how he concluded. But you know what? I want to skip all throughout his testimony because basically he's saying what his partner had said. So I don't think we should mimic or I bring back what he said. Yes, there were discrepancies in his testimony, which I think Balo is still going to stand up and try and say, oh, this was a mistake and that was a mistake during arguments. But anyways, I just want to focus on something that the judge at the end that he asked Matebula about the bullet. So the judge then wanted to ask him some specific questions about searching the house before they started basically identifying exhibitions. And he said, we did look around, we did find these exhibitions being a hat, being crutches, being blood spatters, being the 2 cans of beer, and probably what you call this thing, those plates that were turned upside down, the damaged door, I suppose. But the judge wanted to know something, that probably the search was not thoroughly done, only to turn out to be thoroughly done. And these are the questions that the judge asked, and I'm going to read them. This is what the judge said. For my information, were you ever told that there were other projectiles or cartridges or casings which were found on the crime scene after you and your colleague left? He said no. And then the judge continued and said, you were never told about that, meaning you were never told there were any other items that were found or exhibitions that were found. He said no. Then the judge says, I believe that you searched, but did you know that a bullet can ricochet? He says yes. Then the judge continues, did you check for that? Then he says, this is the witness, we did look, and that is how we saw the damage on the kitchen door. And then the judge continued to ask, did you check the ceiling or any holes of ricocheted bullets? He said, yes, we did. That is when the judge says, that's good, thank you. So meaning that whatever the ballistic people and other police officers that are going to take the stand in future, they can't dispute what this witness has said, because remember, they are the first responders. First responders' job is to, number one, secure the crime scene. I've never been a policeman before. I've never been to a police academy before, but I'm assuming that the first thing that you do as a first responder, because you are a first responder, you would secure and protect the crime scene. The second thing that you're going to look for is injuries. Call medicals to take care of them, and then make sure that the crime scene is protected. Nobody comes in, nobody does anything that is going to contaminate or is going to alter the exhibitions. And then you stand guard of the crime scene until somebody comes for you to hand over the crime scene, and then you leave. But before you leave, you would have jotted down all the crime scene items and exhibitions and whatever else that you found when you got there, right? That's what I think a first responder would do. But now, any forensic or forensic expert or any other policeman that is going to be called by the state cannot dispute what the first responders had already answered the judge for his information. He says there were no any other, so they cannot add or subtract anything else from what the first responders have found on the scene. So what are my thoughts about what transpired today in court? Because again, like I said, there was not much that I can say that, oh, okay, this is what Matebula said. It was just confirmation, collaboration, basically, of what his colleague had already testified in court. Yes, there were some contradictions, but I don't think those contradictions are anything to write home about. But it was how the state totally lost this case. And I'm going to say it in my thoughts. These are my thoughts, basically. Like I said earlier, I've never been to the police academy before. But before we even get to the police academy, let me address the fact that Mr. Mtetwa promised the court that he was going to bring his qualifications to court today, but he did not. Now the question is, does he have those qualifications or doesn't he? Okay, fine. Let's say they did not hand certificates and diplomas or whatever the case is, but does he have a matric? At least, does he have a matric? Because I know for you to apply for a police job, one of the prerequisites is a matric. Does he have a matric? Remember when Shololo asked Tumelo Madlala if he had a matric, and then he was a little bit evasive about it, but he proudly told the court that he does have a matric and he's never failed a class in his life. But Mthethwa did not say that. We don't know if he has a matric or he doesn't have a matric. But to me, I was like, oh, another thing that also made me laugh was the fact that he says that after the court yesterday, he tried to run to HR where he submitted his qualifications. And in my mind, I'm thinking, but no, everybody knows that is working that, or maybe looked for a job before, that you do not submit your original copies of any documents. You submit copies, and then the originals, they stay with you at home. All he had to do is go home, go into his little briefcase or wherever he keeps all his important documents, and then collect all of them and compile them into a list and bring them to court. You don't need an HR to give you those things, which kind of like indicated to me like, okay, by the way, this is after all government work. And we know that in government, nepotism is an order of the day. Now, let's go back to 2014. Who was the Minister of Police at that time? Was it not Natim Mthethwa? And I'm not saying that Natim Mthethwa knows Lungisim Mthethwa. I don't know. I don't know. But when you think about it, he probably doesn't have a matric and he has no prospect of employment anywhere in South Africa where a matric is a prerequisite. So probably he went to uncle and say, hey, Agnam Sebezi, put me somewhere there, I'm not saying that's the fact, but I'm just rubbing my two IQs here. That he may have gotten this job through connections. He may know the Minister of Police at the time, and the Minister of Police was like, okay, so Shutega in the SAPS. Then you're just going to work your way up. Because this guy, the mistakes that after 5 years of being a constable, he gets to a crime scene, he fails to secure it. Those are the things that you are going to learn at the police academy. You cannot tell me that you would just completely disregard that training unless you did not even go to a formal police training in your life. Because that's what it gave to me. Which kind of like leads me back to the thoughts that chances are you got the job through connections. Because at that time, Mthethwa was a Minister of Police, or maybe was a Minister of Police, and he still has some kind of influence in some police stations and put you there. Being a layman who's never been to the police academy, I already said, I would think that when you are the first responder at a crime scene, you would secure the crime scene. You would make sure that everything, by the time the big people like the forensics and detectives come, you already put some cones where exhibitions are visible or even invisible, or you suspect that this could be an exhibition, you would put a cone there. And then once all of that is done, you've written your crime scene statement, then you hand over the crime scene to the detectives, and then off you go. I think that is the basic and simplest thing that you would do when you get to the crime scene as a first responder. But no, not these guys. None of them. What are the student constables are learning? What did they learn out of those two is a question I'm asking. Because I'm assuming the reason why they are shadowing them is to learn practicals on the crime scene. So meaning that there are two police people, whether they were women or men, that also mimic exactly what they were taught by these two. They get to a crime scene, they don't do the necessary things that needs to be done in order for this particular case hold water in court. So I found that the court was deceived by Mr. Mthethwa as well as by the state regarding his qualifications. So the question now is, what happens? Do they just continue being police people without the proper prerequisites to become a police person? Or they're just going to let it slide? I don't know. I'm not saying this man must lose his job. No, he's already 15 or something years into this job already. So I think he's even promoted or something like that. I'm not saying do, but I am saying maybe he needs a refresher's course in the position that he holds, because there is no way that we are going to be having police people that are running around as police and yet they do not know what exactly there needs to be done. And I still say that a refresher course of after 2 years graduating from from police academy, they need to be refreshed on how to be a proper police person. There's no promotion without first you understanding the proper police work. And also this leaves a question: how many other police persons that are currently policemen and women that do not have matrics? How did they become police? And this needs to be investigated thoroughly, because it's playing itself out. These two witnesses exposed the working-ons of the police currently and why cases are getting thrown out when the suspect should have been found guilty. And then lastly, the contamination of the crime scene. I'm not quite sure how the state is going to get itself or fix this part of contamination of evidence at the Khumalo household. I'm not quite even sure how exactly are they going to get accused number 3, since they were focusing so much on him to be linked with the death of Senzo Meyiwa. As a matter of fact, I don't see none of the 5 people that are in the dock currently linked with the Senzo Meyiwa murder. As a matter of fact, what is this case about at this point in time? Because I don't see the state winning this case at all. I've said this and I know it makes a lot of people upset. It is where I'm standing. I'm just a layman. I'm not an expert. I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. But it does not mean that I'm also stupid. I cannot see. And I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this case are saying the same thing. They're like, what exactly are we doing? Why do we keep having this every day when the state clearly no longer has a case? When the state clearly no longer has a case. Because at this point, it's a waste of time. Can we get to the real people? 6 people were present in the house together with Senzo Meyiwa when he was killed that night. They know the truth. Let's start there. At the end of the day, we are still left with this big question: who killed Senzo Meyiwa? And I think the answer lies with 6 people that were with him on that fateful night. They are the ones. Arrest them, bring them to court, even if it means you arrest them and then they join the 5 as accused number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. The least that we can do is that. But now to just let these 5 people that are sitting there in the dock, number 4, what is number 4's thinking again? Because, hey, everybody's been mentioned by number 4. And then I'm sure himself is like, I feel alone. I feel like an island. Why nobody is pointing at me? Because there is nothing to say about accused number 4. He cannot be linked with anything. Telephone records, that's nothing. We already established that. There's no tangible evidence that links accused number 4 with anything. At least have a recording of some sort where he was calling Kelly Khumalo and then there's a commission of murdering Senzo Meyiwa. Something. But anyways, guys, those are my thoughts regarding this, what had happened today in the North Gauteng High Court at the Senzo Meyiwa retrial. So anyways, guys, if you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't like the video, give it a like. Anyways, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and don't forget to click the bell notification so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. My super thanks are turned on. Thank you so much to everybody that is super thanking the channel and supporting it financially. I highly appreciate it very much, you guys. Also, the other thing that I also want to say, do leave me a comment down below and let me know what did you think about today's proceedings. And lastly, do share the video far and wide. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time with a new video. Goodbye.